Yo, partnership alert, partnership alert, partnership alert. Living Corporate has a partnership with LinkedIn Learning, an American massive open online course provider that provides video courses taught by industry experts across a wide array of subjects. Now, the partnership is because Living Corporate has courses on LinkedIn Learning focused on diversity, equity, inclusion for leaders, career professionals, and anyone really looking to upskill themselves and be better allies. So make sure you check out our courses on LinkedIn Learning by clicking the link in the show notes. And let's just say you don't want to do that. When you go to LinkedIn Learning on LinkedIn, search Living Corporate. We'll be right there. All right. Peace.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome back to the break room. We are super glad that you're back for today's session. So I am Dr. Brian Dixon. I am a child and adolescent and adult psychiatrist in Fort Worth, Texas, where I work with families and adults and kids to help them live their best lives by minimizing medication and maximizing psychoeducation. Boom. We are joined this evening with awesome co-host, Dr. Nikki. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Nikki. I am a licensed psychologist and sex therapist here in Houston, Texas. And my work focuses on Black women's relational and sexual well-being. And I also am a racial equity consultant and trainer.
Excellent. And y'all, as always, we are super glad that you're here for this podcast. Make sure to follow us on all the social medias and all of the Instagrams and LinkedIns and all that good stuff.
All of them.
Mm-hmm. And as always, you can send us an email to thebreakroom@living-corporate.com because that's how we keep up with y'all and what's going on. So today's topic is going to be very interesting. It's all about the individual for season 2. And so we're talking about individual things that we have noticed and that we can improve on. We always start our podcasts off with the T, which is some kind of relevant topic that's going on. And I think we got a good one for today. Yes. Then we'll jump into the topic of you are your own worst enemy. Okay. And then
it's true. Y'all don't want to hear it, but it's true.
Yeah, we're going to be speaking some truths to y'all today. I mean, we love y'all and we appreciate y'all, but yeah, we got some stuff to work through. And then as always, we'll finish up with the last nerve, which is that thing that, just chaps our ass. Before we get started, the disclaimer that we always tell y'all, we are psychologists, we are psychiatrists, but we not your psychologist or your psychiatrist. So if you need something, reach out to us through email or to your local resources because we try to do our best to help y'all however we can. So leading off today, y'all. So this tea is, it's actually a joyful tea. Most times we're pissed off and screaming about stuff, but
it's got a lot of honey in this tea.
It does. And a little bit of a sting. Right? So the tea today, y'all, that I wanted to bring up with Dr. Nikki. So we recently heard from the FDA and CDC and everybody that now kids ages 5 to 11 are now eligible for the Pfizer vaccine. And yeah, so I wanted to get some perspective from a parent and a mom. And yeah, so how do you feel about this?
So let me tell you, I've been waiting for this. And so we have a huge healthcare entity here called Texas Children's Hospital. Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of clinics and emergency centers and all the things. They're big footprint and they are trusted for us. That's where my daughter spent the first month of her life because she was a preemie and we've done all of her pediatric care through them. That's where we were when she had an emergency about a month or so ago. And so when I knew that they were when they approved the authorization, TCH had sent out this email saying we're opening up slots, and like I think within a day or two I had gone on and gotten her a slot because I was like, we're going to do this.
Well done.
I was not messing around.
Yeah.
And then I'm really fortunate that I have a good friend here. She's Latina, and she actually had her son in the trials, and that gave me a lot of like personal confidence around it. Mm-hmm. And so we've had a lot of communication because she had a son that qualified for the trial, and then a daughter that did not. So she was waiting for her daughter to get to get vaccinated. So so she texted me one day last week and she was like, it's official, like Walgreens, everybody has slots now. And so that afternoon I was like, boop, I'm getting you a sooner slot. So she got her first shot on Saturday.
How'd she do?
She did really well. Okay, so my daughter is like pain intolerant. That baby don't play. Like she is meant to live a life of pamper and luxury. So she asked the lady, is it going to hurt? And the lady lied. Of course they lied.
Of course.
It's going to be
supposed to do. Mm-hmm.
Lied. So when she went to give her the shot, Asha screamed. She was like, ah! In the middle of the Walgreens. And then she looked at that lady and said, you said it wasn't going to hurt.
Boom.
She was like, oh, I'm sorry. She was like, but it did. But she did fine. Like no side effects at all. She's just her arm being a little sore. I mean, no fatigue. No nothing. It was wonderful. Yay. But I will say, one, even though I was really confident in making the decision, right, and I wanted to have it happen, there still is this little itty bitty irrational part of me that was like, is this safe for my baby? And I don't know that it's necessarily about how I feel about vaccines, but just because there's so much crap in the air about this particular vaccine.
Yep.
And so I just wanted to be public about that. And I shared that with my personal sort of circle on social media. Like, I had this irrational fear and we're doing it anyway, right? Like, I understand the science.
And so when you say irrational fear, because we're going to get into some of this stuff in just a second, y'all. So when you say irrational fear, how do you define irrational fear?
So for me, it's like, I understand this is an mRNA vaccine. I understand the technology's been around for forever. I understand that vaccines work. I understand that they have made sure that the dosage that she gets for her age group fits, what they know about how it functions in there. But I know all of that stuff, right? I'm nobody's epidemiologist. I'm nobody's virologist. I want that to be clear. Immunologist, all those. I don't know none of that, but I know enough to understand basic science. And so I understood, and I had made the decision for myself. I am not only vaccinated fully, but I'm boosted as well. So like, that's what I meant, but that there was still this moment of like, is this going to be okay for my baby? Yep. Right. And like, I am the parent and ultimately she has assent, but it is my decision to do this for her, to her. So there's still a little like emotional, that's what I mean when I say irrational. So a fear or resistance or worry rooted in non-cognitive functioning, non-logical thought is not rooted in reality.
Yeah. And so irrational fears are something that we are going to kind of hint at and talk about other psychological terms in our topic for today. So that's, again, we're super glad you're here. Before we move to that topic, actually, when it comes to the tea, and I'm just super glad that kids get the vaccine because they nasty. Like, I love, and I work with children every day. And
so that's the thing though, Brian, like
child.
The time that she was out of school, because of COVID, was the healthiest she had been in her entire life. Like, I want like no quote unquote viral events, no strep, no flu, no colds. Like, this child would be out at least twice a year with fevers and all sorts of other stuff. And so the 2020, 2021 time period was the healthiest she had ever been. So that was some like big motivation for me. Like, and even she understood when we had a conversation when the Delta variant started really flourishing, and I had to tell her no. Like, I started pulling back on things and saying no. And she said, oh, because like, if there's something to get, my body's going to find it. And I was like, yeah,
1,000,000%.
Yeah. So
And as the psychiatrist, but also the part-time pediatrician, because I trained as a pediatrician during residency.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So one of the things to keep in mind is that if the virus has a pool to live in, if it has a reservoir, it will keep coming back. So yes, children are part of our society. If we can decrease their risk of being a reservoir, please do so, y'all. So that's the pediatrician talking. So
I know we're going to transition, but this is also slightly related. I want to just also share this other part for anybody that's listening and maybe is on the fence. If I could help sway you onto the vaccinated side for your kiddos. What happened, Brian, is like, once she got the shot, she got her little Band-Aid, she got her sticker, She got her lollipop, and we're sitting there waiting for the time period, right, for observation.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me, and I started crying in the middle of Walgreens. And it was so unexpected. And I was like, why am I emotional? And then I was texting a couple friends and family, and I was like, I am in here literally crying in this Walgreens. And, other moms and other people were like, because you've been holding on to so much worry and fear, you've just acclimated to it, but it's been there this whole time. So there was such relief for me, like, and all week she's been like, because even if I get COVID, it ain't gonna kill me, and even if I get COVID, I'm not going to the hospital. Like, she fully gets it. And just a reminder that even though we have all sort of acclimated to the pandemic at this point in our ways, not all of it is functional. Or, I mean, even if it's functional, it's not always healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And just a reminder that getting vaccinated is really significant. Like, it's not a negligent thing at all. So.
Mm-hmm. Amen. And taking care of yourself is what we are all about at the break room, and especially for Black folks at work and Black folks' mental health at work, because that's the whole point of the podcast, y'all. And so we want to make sure that you are as healthy as you can physically. So make sure you talk to your doctor, and if you can get the shot or get the booster or do what you need to do, then by all means do so. So one of the great parts about us being in the mental health world is we like to introduce y'all to lots of ideas, psychological theories and otherwise. And today's topic is you are your own worst enemy. So y'all, as Black folks, especially Black folks at work, especially Black folks doing mental healthy things at work, y'all do a whole bunch of shit sometimes that will get you into trouble, right? And I'm all about, personal empowerment. I'm all about equity and social justice, but let's also keep it real. There's some things that y'all are doing that you're not aware that you're doing that makes your situation worse. And so there's kind of three big terms I wanted to throw out first that we can chit chat about, Dr. Nikki. In the world of psychological theory, there's something called insight. There's something called introspection, and then there's something called enabling. And so what in your practice, in your clinical experience with your pedagogy and your bona fides, what do those three things mean to you? So insight, introspection, and enabling.
Yeah, they're so critical. So insight for me is the ability to make personal meaning out of your experience and your choices, your reality, your perceptions, right? That you have an ability to, here's another term that we didn't discuss, but I think I don't know how to talk about insight without this part. You have the ability to engage in metacognition.
Ooh, nice.
Metacognition is thinking about your thinking.
Ooh,
right?
Preach. Mm-hmm. Hercules. I love it.
Yeah. And so insight means that you have the ability to say, I notice that I am doing this thing. And I also notice that it's not getting me the outcome that I want. I wonder what that's about, right? So that is a way to have insight. And then we want to talk about introspection. And introspection is sort of for me, the necessary, the twin sibling, best cousin to insight, right? And that's ability to say, I'm not getting the outcome I want. What part am I doing in that?
How am I contributing? Preach.
Right. So let me put this in some layman terms for y'all. The big thing now on social media and Twitter is to talk about red flags, right?
Yeah.
So insight is the ability to say, oh, there's a red flag. And then introspection is the ability to say, now, why am I not crossing the street when I see this red flag? Right? Those are how those two pieces go together.
I love it.
And then the last piece is enabling. And for me, I always think about enabling is so fundamental to how I think about the world. I really think we are all the best sum of our interrelationship with other things, other experiences, or other people. Right. You don't have a sense of I in isolation because we are social creatures. Right. So all of what you know about yourself, good, bad, and different, comes through your interactions with other people, other experiences, other things. And enabling is when you select which parts of yourself that are not served well to continue to engage with this person, this experience, this thing, and because it benefits the other more than it benefits you. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like, I'm going to not speak out about the red flag because the red flag is way too overwhelming for me. It's bigger than me. It's somebody I've been in a relationship with for 35 years, or it's somebody that I do business with, or whatever. And so I'm just going to shift my behavior. I'm going to silence myself. I'm going to ignore my insight and behave accordingly.
Hmm. And so, especially in living in a racialized society right now, with everything going on with COVID, everything
Anytime.
going on, yes,
Racialized society from the jump.
yeah, from the get go, exactly. How do we manage? Well, number one, how have we managed, and are we in a reckoning? Because it feels like more and more people are talking about the importance of, again, equity and belonging and
Mhm,
inclusion.
mhm.
And I know that lots of companies are trying to make it important, and it feels like people are trying to make it important. But I mean, are we at a turning point?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm like, because I mean,
Yeah.
black people now, I mean, like we pointed out to them now, black people,
Yeah.
and I'm specifically, I'm not talking about white folks because I don't know that they listen to this podcast anyway. We're talking to you, black person.
They listen.
Yeah.
They stay listening.
Preach. And so I'm like, so black folks, are you being very introspective about what you're required to do at this point? Right. So
Yeah.
we know the importance of you speaking up. If you're not speaking up now, and I don't even know if what I'm trying to say, Dr. Nikki, like I don't know that I'm trying to
So
tell
yeah,
folks to
I
like
think I
start
get what
screaming.
I think I
Yeah.
get what you're saying. And I guess if we're going to start like if we really want to continue to use this framework of like insight, introspection, and enabling, I think um I think black folks have by and large always had insight about how racism functions.
Okay. Yeah.
The
I could. Yeah.
introspection and the enabling are where significant portions of our community fall short on a regular basis, right?
Gotcha. Hmm.
I have um, uh, the opinions of Dr. Nikki Coleman are not those of the Break Room and or Living Corporate Network. Let me just put that disclaimer out there.
Oh, speaking of which, we totally forgot. So our other co-host, Dr. G Day, is off
God,
today.
yes.
So
Oh,
yes, so
yes.
he'll be on a different podcast. So
Yes,
he's
it's
still
just
around.
us two today.
Okay. Yeah.
Just the two of us.
Hey.
G-Day, G-Day is such a model for work-life balance, like that,
Hmm.
even though I kind of hate that phrase, but he is a father, he is a husband, and he prioritizes that. And I'm never mad at him for that. So,
Hmm.
but we miss you, G-Day.
Yay.
But so as I was saying, what my disclaimer was, I have a sweatshirt that says "Never trust anyone that Harriet would have shot,"
Oh.
and I love to wear that shirt. I really
Mhm.
would. I might think about getting it as a tattoo someday because
I
that's how
love
much
it.
I believe in that, right? And that, let's be clear, as long as Black folks have been on this continent, there have always been factions of us that have decided to not engage in introspection and
Hmm.
to enable the system because it is comfortable.
Hmm.
And there's always, I think, this really distorted belief that if I collude with the system, one day I'll get rewarded.
Hmm.
And so I don't, so, but I think there are lots of folks that sort of sit in the middle, um, which is true for almost every human phenomenon, right?
I
That's how
agree.
we have this concept of like the average,
Hmm.
because if any phenomenon existed where there was more people on one or other end, then the phenomenon sort of wouldn't exist,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
So I think the same thing is true for Black folks in terms of our ability to see, name, call out, and require something different in response to racism, whether it be individual or systemic.
Hmm.
Right. And so the ability to have insight is to recognize, I don't think that there are that many Black people that deny the existence of racism, but there are a whole lot of Black people who distort their level of introspection about what that means for them as an individual, and they definitely enable the system. And I think one of the ways that primarily functions, so like as a heuristic for that, the term internalized racism covers a lot of it for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, we kind of hinted at some of this in a previous podcast. So please make sure you go and listen to all our podcasts because they build on one another. Okay, that's how this works. And so because my understanding of internalized racism maybe is a little bit different than other folks. And so I've always considered it as, if there are things that you are uncomfortable about yourself that have been put into your mind by society, you need to be able to call them to consciousness, like call them to the front of your mind, because otherwise it will unconsciously make you make decisions that you may not know about. So for example, like I grew up super poor and in the country. And so if you going into school, I would hear teachers mispronounce people's names, Laquatiana, right? And I would see the the white folks say the name and they struggled with it and it felt bad. And so as a result, I felt shame, even though, it didn't involve me. But then as I grow up and I grow through life, I remember being in residency and I would see babies get named and I would go, oh my God, did this mom just name this kid this particular thing? Right. And it wasn't until I had to call myself out and be like, wait a minute. It's just a name. Like, depending on culture, like in Hawaii, they use lots of vowels and lots of apostrophes. In other places, they use other things. And so why do I feel bad about this? And it's because, I've been made to think that it was bad. And so I had to call out my own internalized, to me, racism, because it did temper and it did change how I interacted with that new mom, when I went in to check on her, because
100%.
I had my own issues. And so, so I go ahead.
I think that's a perfect example though, right? Of like all of the pieces that we're talking about, your insight into that. First, the insight that you had the awareness, even at a young age, that made you uncomfortable, and that discomfort showed up as shame, right? So we're just giving you all the terms today. We could talk about this idea called collective self-esteem. And so I think folks of color, and I realize I want to check the research on this. Actually, I think there's research to support that folks of color, in particular Black people, experience collective self-esteem more so than white folks, because our identity is sort of rooted in a sense of community and connectivity. Right. And so the other side of collective self-esteem is like collective shame. Right. So when something happens to one of us in a public space that doesn't feel good, we have been socialized to say that it reflects poorly on all of us, right? And so that insight that you had early on is pretty outstanding. It's probably why you went down the road to become a psychiatrist, right? Well, it's probably why you're good at it, right? And so then the introspection was for you to later to say, I don't like how this is showing up in how I'm treating my patients, because this is misaligned with my values and my goals and ideas as a professional and as a human. And then the enabling piece is to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I choose to not enable, right? I don't want to collude. That the term I use when we talk about an enabling relationship with a system is to say collusion, right? So meaning my behavior, whether that is my silence or whether that is my acquiescence or appeasement, my ignoring intentionally certain things, all of that facilitates the system functioning as it should be. So that's what we mean when we say collusion.
Well, and it's really funny because biologically, and you said this earlier, Dr. Nikki, I love the word heuristic. I can't spell it worth a damn, but I swear it's one of the coolest damn words ever, which is basically a shortcut. Right?
It means a shortcut. It's a mental shortcut. HEURISTIC.
Okay. Please use it in a sentence. No, I'm kidding. And so one of the funny parts, because we're all human beings, right? So below our melanin, we have cells and everything else. And one of the funny parts about your brain cells is that it will create shortcuts because it generally keeps you alive. So that you don't have to overthink everything, right? And so our biology, in a sense, can work against us. If we're not careful, if we let racism create a pattern within us, it will become a heuristic. It will become a shortcut. And then it is so damn hard to change that once you get stuck in it. And even when people bring it up to you.
Because the other brain science is we're hardwired for negativity.
Yes,
right?
preach.
Because the brain is wired to search for threat to protect us from threat, which means we're always looking for the negative. I've heard that you really, it takes like almost 5 times a positive to offset one negative. So there is a bias already in our brains to look for the negative.
Which is why, as a side note, messy people hang out with messy people because
messy folks stay around messy folks.
They like the drama, y'all. Stay out the drama. And so,
but the other thing about that one thing though, that is like, it's a different kind of enabling, right? Because if we always talk about somebody else, then we don't ever have to deal with our own.
Oh, preach.
I'm gonna say it again for the people in the back. If you always talking about somebody else and their business, you don't have to deal with your own. It gets real comfortable not dealing with your own stuff.
It is hard.
Yes.
So, and it's really funny. And that is a defense mechanism that a whole bunch of people use. So a defense mechanism, again, it's a heuristic. It is a shortcut that your brain will use to help you deal with a stressful situation. And we talked a lot about defense mechanisms in season 1. But and I can't remember if it's projection or displacement. I'll always get them wrong. But basically, it's where you get mad at your boss and you come home and kick the dog, right?
That is displacement.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, it is displacement. And projection is when you get mad at your boss and you come home and you tell your wife it's her fault.
Yeah, correct. And as you can tell, so telling the wife that it's her fault, kicking the dog, that's all messy, right? So we're using technical terms for the term messy. And so Black folks, don't be messy. Handle your shit, right? You are your own worst enemy. Handle your shit. And so let's talk about how they can do that.
Yes, for sure. And I love it. We got a good flow today because what I was just about to say is it is insight is a skill, right? I will never forget. I had my eye exam at one point. I used to work at the University of Houston, so I would go to their optometry school on the cheap, but it would be students, and so they would want to spend a lot of time building rapport and chit chat. And I will never forget. I had one, and she was like, "What professor? Like, what do you teach?" And I said, "Counseling psychology. Basically, I train therapists to be therapists." And she looked at me immediately, and she was like, "I don't like that. I don't like that." She was like, "I'm very superficial. I like to stay right on the surface."
Wow.
She felt threatened immediately just by me saying what I did. And I was like, okay, friend, because I don't want to really get into your business today. I want you to check these eyes. So whatever we need for that boundary, let's do that. But most people have the capacity. We could talk on a different podcast about psychiatric disorders or other organic brain malformations that might prevent you from doing that. But by and large, if you're of average intelligence and plugged in neurocognitively to interpersonal interactions, you can build insight. And even folks that are neurodivergent have the capacity for insight.
Yeah.
And actually they help us know that because we can teach them that as a skill. So y'all ain't got no excuses.
Zero. And that's actually, so there are ways to learn it very concretely, meaning there's no fluff to this, right? So literally go take a class. Nowadays you can take a class online. There's University of Phoenix, everything in between, right? So go take a class in psychology and learn these terms, learn about insight, learn about traditional human development. If you want to be a bit more advanced or a bit more abstract, you can do things like masterclass. Luckily, living-corporate.com has a ton of resources, web episodes that talk about building insight in work and in different settings. And so at this point, Black folks, you have zero excuse not to work on building insight.
That's
So
it.
yep. How else can we help?
So one is, I always tell people to start small, right?
Mhm.
And to stop ignoring that little voice inside.
Mm, preach.
You are having a reaction, right? You know, if you have been in the meeting and you watch yourself or you watch your colleague get microaggressed meeting after meeting and you don't say nothing, you are choosing to enable the colleague, the supervisor, the whoever in the room that is doing that.
Mhm.
So the question isn't that you gotta, like, you don't have to Norma Ray it, like you ain't gotta like Malcolm X it, right? Like, but it does require you to start with that small voice inside and say, okay, I feel belittled. I feel shamed. I feel angry. I feel frustrated, whatever it is. And what happens is the more you do that, the more you are able to then see it, name it, and then you can formulate a strategic and thoughtful and relevant response to the situation.
Mhm.
And also, and related to that is having a sense of empowerment that you don't have to enable, right? That you have the capacity to engage differently. You have the capacity to do something different.
Yeah. And I think one of my favorite tips is the next one, which is basically find new friends. So the idea is that, and I think Mark Cuban said this, and I'm sure somebody black said it before, but let's not go there. Which is, you are a combination of the 5 people that you hang around the most, right? And that's true, like, because human beings are social creatures, and it's really funny. Until I started, until I met the co-host from season 1, so Dr. Hill, Dr. Nikki, Dr. G. I did not feel comfortable saying the term white supremacy. And Dr. Hill introduced the idea of the white toxicity. Like that first season was really kind of personally tough for me to get through, because I felt all sorts of, no, in a good way, because I was like,
okay.
wait a minute. Yeah, this is a very good way. I grew a lot because I was starting to feel like, wait a minute, am I saying that all white people are racist, or am I saying that all white people are evil? And the key is, especially in season 1, go back and listen to it, and you won't ever actually hear that at all. My brain, because I have my own, or had my own issues, my brain made that shit up. And that irrational fear of, oh my God, as Dr. Nikki said earlier in this podcast, irrational fears are strong. Like I was like, oh shit, what's going to happen? And I was like, wait a minute, hold on. We're talking systemic issues. Yes, there are also blatant racists, but there's nuance and there's layers to this, right?
Yeah.
So finding new friends for me, so finding my co-host, it has been incredibly thrilling and helpful and soothing to be around folks who are thinking broad, and I just appreciate that I'm here.
Yeah. So related to that, what I heard you say that I didn't hear you say explicitly, so I want to name it explicitly, is give yourself permission to change and grow.
Amen. Yes.
I don't know where the socialization around, like, you have childhood, you have teenager time, adolescence, and then, why did I call it teenager time? We have a term for that. It's called adolescence, Dr. Nikki. You have childhood, you have adolescence, and then you're grown, and then you're old. Like, the grown part is very, very long, and a lot can change in who you are and what you value. I mean, I'm going to actually say it this way. A lot should change in what you value and who you are and how you live in alignment with those things between the ages of, I'm going to be generous and say 25 and 75, or 25 and 60. That's a lot of life. And if you stay stagnant, that can create a lot of discomfort for you. So one of the adages that I've heard is choose your hard. You can lean into the discomfort like you talked about, right? And wrestle with that and reconfigure and rearrange and reexamine. Or you can choose to ignore it and then have to deal with the difficulties of the fallout around you. Choose your hard. And what I say is choose a hard that empowers you. Choose a hard that actually elevates you and allows you to be a better, stronger, more integrated, more joyful version of yourself. Because there's a lot of living between 25 and 65.
Amen. Ooh, child. Well, and Dr. Nikki, have you heard of the term self-compassion or loving kindness? Is that
Let
a
me tell you, I work on my personal self-compassion regularly. Regularly. When I tell you every week, my therapist be like, "Oh, this seems like an opportunity for us to practice our self-compassion again." Shut up,
yeah,
Dr.
yeah.
And I use it with my own clients, the hypocrite that I am. I cannot speak enough about self-compassion for Black folks in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So self-compassion is this recognition that many of us are far more able to access compassion, kindness, empathy for other folks than we do for ourselves. Meaning we tend to honestly be our worst critics,
Mm-hmm.
right? Meaning that we tend to set bars for ourselves that are particularly high or create these sort of internal obstacles about what our capacity is that are not necessarily true. And then we sort of shame ourselves around that. And self-compassion says it's really sort of a radical way of saying, I am human, I am imperfect, but I'm doing my best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I cannot stress the importance of it enough. What I never remember the woman's name because she has a website all about it. Yeah, who's done a lot of work on it.
Oh, and I can't remember because I was introduced to the term self-compassion because there's a Center for Mindful Self-Compassion. So, and mindfulness
Kristen
being,
Neff.
oh, who is it
Chris,
again?
Kristen Neff,
Gotcha.
Neff. I was like,
Awesome.
I know she has a name.
Yeah. But I first ran across loving kindness in a book. It was a Buddhism. Pema Chodron is where I first saw it, and they were
Oh,
talking
okay.
about loving kindness and just being kind and gentle with yourself. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God! And this is so anti everything that we're kind of told right now, which is go build a brand, be out there, be excellent all the time, never fail, show up, show out. And I'm like, ooh, that's a lot, y'all.
Stay up late, work,
Yeah.
grind, hustle,
Yeah. Yeah.
go.
Mm-mm.
No, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I'm like, there's a time and place for everything. And you
Yeah.
cannot run your engine 24/7, 365. So make sure that you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And that,
Can I add one thing before we
yeah.
segue?
Yeah.
Related to loving kindness. So loving kindness, you will typically encounter more in meditation spaces. And so that is also a way for you to continue to build your insight and to build your introspection is engage in a meditation practice, right? 5 minutes a day. Take your time out. And for Black folks, you can pray and meditate. They're not in conflict with one another. You're
Preach.
not worshiping Buddha. It's just a way for you to engage differently with your own self and your own mind, right? But the more I meditate, the more I have access to that voice inside, the more I can also have sort of confidence that when I'm reacting or making choices, that it really is coming much more from an authentic or self-compassionate place than me just being reactive.
I love it. And before we segue over to the last nerve, the last one on our list is y'all find a therapist. Therapy is incredibly helpful. So anytime that I'm teaching all of my adult patients, I always remind them that you are a terrible therapist for yourself because you're so close to yourself, right? You're too
It's
close to
laughable
yourself.
how terrible you are.
It is.
You can't do it for yourself.
Nope. Yeah, because you're so close to yourself that you can't be objective. So objective is being able to step away and kind of look at something without the kind of layers of emotion and humanity and everything, just looking at something. And so, and so a therapist can help you visualize things differently, interpret things differently, so that if you and help you build that introspection, identify where enabling is occurring, so that then you can make those changes and stop being your own worst enemy. So, anything you want to add to the therapist talk before we get to your last nerve?
Just that also, like Black folks, we go to therapy. We're not gonna bring that. We don't go to therapy into 2021. We left that alone in 2019, actually. So you have no excuses. Go to therapy. It is so easy to find a therapist. I always plug these directories: therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men, melanin mental health, inclusive therapists. They're all free. It don't cost you nothing to go and look and search and find someone who looks like you, who will affirm who you are, and do your healing work. Just do it.
Preach. Amen. Amen. I think I've had 3 therapists over my lifetime, and they were all incredibly helpful for the phase that I was in. So in other words, I was not laying on the couch and doing the, Freudian thing for years and years and years. It was, I went in, I worked with a therapist for a certain amount of time. I worked through whatever was going on. I shifted to different jobs and different phases of my life, and different things would come up, and I could go back and kind of process those things. So yeah. It's super, super helpful.
Except I told my therapist I ain't never going. I'm never.
You are mine forever.
And she just looked at me like, we know that's not right.
Exactly. Yeah.
We'll talk about that next session.
Exactly. She's like, we will process that on a different day. And so, yeah, we appreciate y'all joining us on the break room. Before we finish up for today's podcast, we want to talk about the last nerve. So today's last nerve is what?
You know what it is.
It is. Yeah. I was like, wait, where are my notes, y'all? So do you want to introduce it? Or you want me to introduce it and give you your time?
Let you introduce it and give me my time.
So y'all, there is a big old debate on Twitter now, and just media in general, about how young is too young to talk about racism with kids. And notice they didn't say black kids or white kids. They just said kids, which I will let Dr. Nikki just take it from there. And 2 minutes on the clock. All right, go.
Oh Lord, hold my mule. This is the stupidest thing ever. And one of the things that bothers me as a Black person who has had insight, introspection, and awareness for a great deal of time about the functions of racism is these circular freaking arguments. Like, this is not a new argument. It's been around before. It's never too early to teach kids about racism. You know why? Because we all get taught racism from day one. We are born into a racist system and racist structure. And the way that the shit functions is by teaching everybody what their role is. So if you think Lil Keisha and Lil Chad are not understanding what the system is from the beginning, you're lying to yourselves. They understand it better than you. You know why? Because they don't have the filter, and they are making observations and making sense of the world around them, and they will name that shit before you would. So you have much more opportunity to have control and socialization around it if you engage the conversation. The other problem is I'm trying not to name no names, but I've had a couple incidents with white boys at my daughter's school of late that have made me say, and then we're going to fast forward to 25 years and Lil Chad is going to be a whole problem in the workplace because he has been socialized from this moment right here that he's not wrong, that his feelings can take center, that his opinions matter more than the Black child, or especially the Black girl child. Racism is happening all the time. It is just a matter of whether you name it or not. And in this household, and as far as these Colemans go, we talk about that shit all the time. Last night we were watching the Civil War documentary that's out on Peacock, right? Last night the night before that, she read a book about this Black woman that I didn't even know. I'm still learning history with her, Mary Tucker, who was the oldest Black woman that learned to read. She was 121. She lived to be 121, but she didn't learn to read till she was in her 90s, right? So we have to name and talk about these things so that we can disempower them, so that we can empower our children of color to be able to assert when it is happening, advocate for themselves, and not internalize the shit because it doesn't go away just because you don't want to talk about it.
Amen. Preach. And that is the last nerve from Dr.
My
Nikki.
last nerve.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate y'all joining us on today's podcast. Per usual, we are on all of the social media platforms, especially on Twitter. So hit us up, and you can always shoot us an email to thebreakroom@living-corporate.com.
Tweet at us. Let us know. You can find us in all places and spaces. So just reach out. We want to keep the conversation going.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we even and if you have any thoughts, by all means, just let us know. So, for Dr. G Day, who's not here, I'm Dr. Dixon, Dr. Nikki. Yeah. So, we want y'all to have a great evening, a great day. So, thanks. Bye, y'all.
Bye.